It's 1:23 in the morning, and you've been awake for 16 hours. You're 25 years old. Your name is Leonid Toptunov, and 10 weeks ago they handed you the controls of a nuclear reactor. Reactor number 4, Chernobyl, northern Ukraine. Right now, it's humming under your hands at a fraction of the power it's supposed to make, and you're carrying the specific exhaustion of a man handed someone else's experiment at the last minute, told to finish it before the shift ends. You do not know that the reactor beneath you is a trap. Nobody told you. That information is a state secret. In 90 seconds, your shift chief is going to give you an order. It's the safest order in the building, the one drilled into every operator, the one you could execute in your sleep. When something goes wrong, shut it down. Press the button. You're going to press the button. And the button is going to blow up the reactor. This is not a story about idiots. This is a story about a room full of competent men and the machine that was built to betray them. Stay with the clock. Rewind. Before the button. Before the night shift. Who are you? You were born in 1960 into a military family, a Soviet officer's son, which meant a childhood of postings and moves and a certain kind of discipline. You were good at physics, and in the Soviet Union of the 1970s, being good at physics pointed one direction: the atom. Nuclear power wasn't just a job, it was the future the entire country was betting on. Clean, limitless, Soviet-built proof that the system worked. So you trained, and they sent you to Pripyat. Pripyat is 2 years old when you arrive, a city built from nothing beside the Chernobyl plant for the people who run it. The average resident is 26. There are amusement park rides waiting to open, a swimming pool, a river beach. Everything is new because everyone is young. It is, on paper, the best place in the Soviet Union to be a bright 25-year-old with a future. You're a senior reactor control engineer, 10 weeks in the job. Tonight you take the night shift, and you walk into the hall of reactor number 4. Here's what you weren't told when you and the rest of the night shift clocked in. The test tonight isn't yours. It was written for the day shift, prepared for weeks, meant to run in daylight with the people who understood it. And it isn't even a nuclear test. It's electrical. A safety experiment on the turbine. The logic goes like this. If the plant ever loses outside power, the pumps that cool the reactor stop. There's a gap, 30, maybe 60 seconds, before the backup diesel generators spin up to take over. The engineers want to prove that a turbine, still coasting on its own momentum after the steam is cut, can bridge that gap. Keep the pumps turning for those few seconds. On paper, it's a formality, commissioning paperwork. Nobody in the building thinks tonight is the night they gamble with reactor physics. They've tried this exact test 3 times before: 1982, 1984, 1985. Failed all 3. The turbine's voltage collapsed too fast every time. This is attempt number 4, and this time they've got a fix, and nobody wants to write "failed again" on the 4th report. This was the 4th attempt, and in the Soviet Union, there is no such thing as a casual 4th attempt. Then the day falls apart. At 2 in the afternoon, the emergency cooling system is switched off for the test, a routine step. Then Kiev calls. A power plant somewhere has dropped off the grid, and they need Chernobyl's electricity through the evening. So the test waits. 9 hours. The prepared day crew goes home, and it lands on your shift. Just after 11, you and the men around you inherit a half-finished experiment nobody at the panel designed, at reduced power, with the safety cooling already switched off from a day crew that's gone to bed. You've also inherited a reactor with 2 flaws built into it. 2 ways it can kill everyone in this building. You don't know about either one. Nobody does down here at the panel. The men who do know are in Moscow, and the flaws are classified. So you pick up where the day shift left off. You start bringing the power down, and the reactor begins to wake up in a way you can't see. The power needs to come down to around 700 megawatts for the test. Bringing it there is your job. You sit at the reactor controls tonight, one operator among several, each with his own board. Alexander Akimov runs the shift. Anatoly Dyatlov, the deputy chief engineer, stands behind you all, and he wants this finished. You bring the power down carefully. This is your job, and you're good at it. Then, at 28 minutes past midnight, it doesn't stop at 700. It falls through 500, 200, 100, down to about 30 megawatts in a reactor built to run at 3,200. You've almost put it out. And now the reactor does something you have no way to see. It starts to poison itself. When a reactor runs hot, it constantly burns off a substance called xenon 135, a ferociously good neutron absorber, the closest thing a reactor has to an internal off switch. Run it flat out and the xenon burns away as fast as it forms. But you've just crashed the power. So the xenon stops burning off and it floods in, and it starts smothering the chain reaction from the inside. Picture turning a fire down to embers and watching the ash pile over the coals until it chokes the last flame. That's happening now, under your hands, and you can't see it on any dial. There's a choice here, and it isn't only yours to make. Shut down completely, which means a poisoned reactor, a full day lost, the test failed a fourth time, and a very unpleasant conversation with the men above you. Or drag the power back up. The shift decides to raise it, Dyatlov standing right there. So the reactor comes back up, and the way you do that at your station is by withdrawing control rods from the core. The rods are what absorb the reaction and hold it down, so fewer rods means more power. But the xenon is winning, so more come out. And more. Past the number the rulebook says must always stay in the core. There's a hard floor on this, a safety minimum, and somewhere in here the reactor drops below it. Nothing on the panel screams. The one figure that would flag the danger doesn't update in real time. It sits in a computer that recalculates every few minutes, always trailing the reactor by a step. And it still isn't enough. The reactor claws up and stalls at about 200 megawatts. 200, when the test needs 700. The crew is running a reactor in a state the manuals quietly tell them never to run it in, and none of them fully knows why the manuals say that. Here's what nobody in the room understands. Every rod pulled to save the reactor was also arming it. This machine, an RBMK, becomes more dangerous the lower and emptier it runs. Down here, in this state, boiling coolant doesn't calm the reaction. It accelerates it. An engine that presses its own accelerator the faster it goes. You think you're stabilizing it. You're loading it. Then, to feed the test, the crew brings 2 more main pumps online. All 8 now running. That's the unit control engineer's board, not yours, but you feel it. Too much water, too little margin, the whole core balanced on a knife's edge. So, was this recklessness? Were you and the men around you fools? Or were you a crew set up to fail by a machine no one let any of you understand? It's 1:23 in the morning. On the order to proceed, the test begins. 1:23 and 4 seconds. The test begins. The steam to the turbine is shut off. The turbine starts to slow, and as it slows, the pumps it drives push less water through the core. Less flow means the water that's left starts to boil. And in this reactor, in this state, boiling doesn't calm the reaction. It feeds it. Steam forms, power rises, more steam, more power. The accelerator pressing itself. The power starts to climb. Slowly. Then, not slowly. A number on your panel begins to move in a direction it should never move. Then, an alarm. You are 25 years old. You have been awake for 16 hours, and the reactor you are responsible for is running away from you. Akimov, your shift chief, the man in charge, gives the only order that exists for this moment. The order every operator is trained to obey, the safest command in the building. Shut it down. Press AZ5. 1:23 and 40 seconds. Because it's your station, your hand on that control, you reach for AZ5 and press it. Every control rod in the core begins to drop at once. This ends it. This ends everything, every time. This is the button that makes reactors safe. Except these rods are tipped with graphite, not the material that absorbs the reaction, the material that speeds it up. And for the first few seconds as the rods descend, it's the tips that enter the core first. So the button built to smother the reaction, for one moment, feeds it instead. A brake pedal that, for the first instant you stand on it, floors the gas. You have just floored the gas on a reactor already redlining. In about 4 seconds, the power spikes past 100 times what the reactor was ever built to hold. There is no procedure for what happens next, because what happens next isn't supposed to be possible. The core destroys itself. 2 explosions tear Reactor 4 open. The second one lifts the 1,000-ton shield off the top of the reactor like a coin and blows the roof off the building. The night sky is now directly above an open reactor core, and you are standing 60 feet away. And here's the thing you cannot accept. You don't believe it. Nobody in the room does. Reactors do not explode. You know this the way you know your own name. So you assume the worst is a lesser disaster, and you and Akimov go looking for valves to pump water into a core that no longer exists. You spend your last usable hours fighting to save a reactor that is already gone, soaking up the radiation dose that will kill you in 3 weeks. You did everything right. That was the problem. Leonid Toptunov died on the 14th of May, 1986, in a Moscow hospital. He was 25. The radiation took him the slow way, the way it takes everyone who's near an open core. His father searched for his body and later reburied him at a cemetery in Moscow. But the story of what he did wasn't finished dying with him. That year, the official verdict was simple. The operators did it. An IAEA report laid out the case. The men in the room ran the reactor too low, pulled too many rods, ignored the procedures. Human error. In 1987, 6 men were put on trial. 3 of them were sentenced to 10 years. And on the face of it, the report wasn't wrong. They did break those rules. But it left out the only question that matters. Why did breaking those rules destroy the reactor? On any reactor built honestly, it shouldn't have. It should have given them a mess, a reprimand, a bad week. Not a crater. The answer was the thing the operators were never allowed to know. The flaws in the design and the safety button that could trigger the very explosion it was built to stop. 6 years later, in 1992, a second international report admitted it. Yes, the operators made mistakes, but the decisive cause was the reactor itself and the state that hid its flaws from the men running it. The blame moved, quietly, off the room and onto the machine. Toptunov never read it. He'd been dead 6 years. Valery Legasov, the scientist who stood before the world in 1986 and presented the operator error case, spent his last years recording tapes that told a fuller, uglier story. He died 2 years to the day after the explosion. You may have seen the HBO series. Most of it is closer to the truth than not. But the men it needed to be villains mostly weren't. They were just the last people to touch a machine no one had told them the truth about. So go back to the beginning. Not to the button. Further. Go back to the 25-year-old walking into a shining new city built for the future. Average age 26. An amusement park waiting to open. His whole life in front of him. He was good at physics. He trained for years. He was handed the controls of the machine his entire country believed in. And on his 10th week in the job, on his night shift, running a test that was never supposed to be his, he was ordered to press a button. The safe button. The right button. The only button, and it killed him. Because the men who built the reactor decided he didn't need to know what it could do. Leonid Toptunov did everything he was trained to do. The lie was the machine. There are more stories like his, where the version you were told isn't the version that happened. If that's the history you're here for, subscribe. We'll keep finding them.